You walk across the floor, our eyes lock. Take my hand, you say, can't say no. You lead and I trust. I follow each step, wear a blindfold, intoxicated in your sweat. Slow tempo, bolero, slow death. The crowd's gone. It's you and me. Soul swaying, burning heat. Woo! This is fire. Intense tango, toxic, toxic crush. Fast beats, adrenaline rush, spinning violently, losing control, suffocating. Yet I need more bruised body, drained soul, no grace, no space, faint pulse, hitting the ground, exhausted, afraid, guilt, shame, embarrassed to seek aid. Press pause, charm, sober, put one foot after the other, labored breathing, trembling, trying, rehearse a new routine, balance while crying, dancing alone, spacious, empty room, merengue, bachata, salsa, cumbia, tunes. My world is my stage, not falling anymore, enjoying my moves, stay across the floor. Listen, this is Anne Marie, host of About This Life. I am so pleased to have this author on my show, Miss Elayna Fernandez. Hi, Elayna.
Hello, Anne Marie. Thank you so much for having me and for reading my poem.
Absolutely. And I'm going to get your name right because the least I can do is do that part. So I was going Elayna, Elayna.
You got it. Oh my goodness. Yes, yes.
Elayna. Okay, so I just want to give our listeners some background. First of all, about this life, we celebrate this journey in terms of renewal and transformation. We want to break free from limited mindsets because we want to find a place where we can heal some of these emotional wounds that we carry around, sometimes since we were children.
Yeah.
And we want to find ourselves in terms of our mind, body, and spirit. So the
Mhm.
poem that I read from your book, and I have it here with me, Dancing with Death.
Yeah.
Why dancing with death? Come on. Who dances with
Well,
death?
I am smiling, but it is not a happy subject, and yet it is a subject that is my reality. So Anne Marie, ever since I was 5 years old, that was the first time I remember dancing with suicidal thoughts.
At 5.
5 years old, I remember I was five and I, went to sleep that night after experiencing a lot of hurtful actions and words and thinking to myself that I didn't belong in this world. And I would look up and, there was a tin roof and it was rusting. And I would stare at all of that and think and pray actually to God, saying, I hope I don't wake up tomorrow.
Mm.
I'm
What
better off dead. Yeah.
what kind of world is that? That help us to see that world that at 5 you don't want to wake up.
Yeah. It was heavy. And, I felt different. I've always been kind of a big thinker. And definitely a big feeler. And so ever since I can remember, I was told you're too
Mm,
dramatic,
yes.
trágica, tragic, and emotional. And so when I think about that, it was like I was too much, but also I was not enough. And so living in a place in extreme poverty in the Dominican Republic. It was a slum. We lived right next to a landfill, and it was a very precarious situation. And yet, even in poverty, it was all we knew. So it didn't really define who we were, but the hurtful words that I heard every day, the physical violence, the demoralizing ways in which I was treated, even at that early age, helped me, or I would say, led me to think that this life was just pain and that there was nothing to look forward to. And I call it dancing with death because I love dance. I actually wanted to be a choreographer when I grew up. Turns out I'm Marie. I never
Yeah.
grew up. I'm I'm 4'8".
Okay.
But
So that means you still dancing. Did you learn to dance?
exactly. I'm still dancing, and I call it a dance because it was interesting how in my spirit there were two parts of me that dance with each other. One that said, it's too much, I'm done, I can't do this anymore. It's just too much to bear.
Mhm,
And there was another part that said, no, girl,
mhm. You got it.
you are bigger than this.
Mhm.
This is the vision I have for you. You are going to live and you're going to make a difference and you're going to be someone significant. And it's crazy that you started with my poem because I started to write poems when I was 5 years old. And
Yeah.
that was my escape from this. And some of my earliest writings were about my funeral.
Mm.
I wrote poems about my funeral, and I saw these people who all gathered to celebrate my life. And so I saw people crying, and I saw people, and I wrote about people, the words that they said about me and the difference that I had made. And that fueled me as if to prophesy what was possible for me.
So it's sort of living in your imagination to soften the blows.
Yeah,
In your story, I heard mention of physical violence
yeah,
against you at
yeah,
5, at that young.
yeah,
Mm. And I also heard in terms of this dance we do. And the interesting thing about dance, I love dancing. I do hand dancing. It's
yeah.
almost like salsa, but at a R&B beat. And
Ooh,
or swing, we might hear Detroit ballroom, that sort of thing.
yeah,
And at some points, the leader is leading you through. And as a female, I would have to follow the leader. And the
hmm,
leader is doing the choreography. He lets me know when I turn, when I move down the floor, and so on and so forth. So I wonder the two parts of you, what was leading when?
yeah.
It's almost like you had a dark side inside your mind in terms of your experience. And then yet you had this light that says, no, I'm bigger than this. I'm better than this.
Yeah. Well, we all have those parts inside of us, and the ones that you call dark, um, I call them wounded parts. And
Mm,
so they're
mm,
trying to protect us. And I still, to this day, I struggle with this. I have tools now. And it's been over 40 years now that I'm 47 years old, and I have been able to survive. And actually research shows us that poetry is a very viable way to cope and process trauma. So I definitely recommend doing that, especially when you feel very alone, like I felt, like I had no one to turn to, and there was no
mm-hmm,
safe place to express my feelings.
mm-hmm.
And especially as a highly sensitive person, you might feel that there is nowhere to turn because people are going to misunderstand you. And in today's world where there's so much, I call it poisonous positivity, people don't understand that there's room for all of our emotions. So for me, it was more like I had these two sides, still have them, but at that time I didn't own them. And so the difference now is that at the dark side or the wounded side,
The wounded side. Yeah.
I embrace it and I give it a
Yeah.
voice, and I, make art with them, and
Mm-hmm.
I validate them. And if the voice is saying, Elayna, it's too much, you're better off dead, you deserve to just rest, and that may just come up spontaneously. You never know what's going to trigger that.
So how do you make that art?
Yeah, so I would first validate that voice and say, you know what, it is too much. What if we just took a little break? And I
Mm.
negotiate with that little voice. And my little break is usually art, is usually, painting. And let me show you
Yes, yeah.
something, you know. Um, this this is one of my
Mm-hmm.
paintings, and I'm not a good painter, and that's
Mm-hmm.
great.
There's no the art therapist told me there's no such thing as a
Y-
bad art, a
Yeah.
not good art. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then and I use like these paper towels here, so I'm just, to give it texture, and I'm just painting. I painted this darkness that was coming out of me, and this water that's, you know threatening to drown me. So I just gave it a voice on how I felt, but at the same time I'm hugging myself.
Mm-hmm.
And
And comforting.
yes, as I
Mm-hmm.
hug myself, then the water level is not overwhelming and the darkness starts to come out. And so that's one of the ways. And of course, my poems.
Yes, I
Uh,
do.
because with the poetry, it's a place where the reality and the imagination can collide, where we can give all of our emotions a voice, when we can have a safe space. It's just a blank piece of paper, and we give space for whatever comes out, and we don't have to publish them. I did after negotiating with parts of me, right? But it could be just a space for you to say, you know what, I it's valid what you're saying. It feels like too much. Let's put it down on paper. Let's play with something. Let's give it a form in a safe space. And of course, if there are safe people in our lives, we might talk to them. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel that before you talk to anyone else, you got to talk to yourself.
Amen. Amen. I,
Yeah.
I I have this line that I say, and I often say that poetry finds you. Because
Yes.
as an educator, I teach my middle school students age 13 that I have to teach them how to write the analytical paper, right? Or the
Yeah.
argumentation. However, that comes from the head. Poetry
Hmm.
comes from the heart.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
said, poetry will find you. You see my artwork.
It's beautiful. I was just
I
admiring it.
Yes, absolutely. I find release in art as well.
Yeah.
So, how does someone climb from the depths of poverty, living
Yeah.
next to a trash heap, and you're going through all this at such a young age? And Elayna, you are a five-time TEDx speaker. You are an
Hmm.
author.
Yeah.
You are a master trainer. You're traveling. Oh my goodness, you've traveled all over our country and getting ready. You're getting ready to go to India, but you've been to 134 countries, is what I understand it to be. So, how do you go from trash heap and feeling like you don't belong here to this person that everybody wants you to come talk to them? How, fill in the blank. Fill in the
Oh my
blank.
gosh. I'm getting, teary here. hearing you put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel that I've been led all my life. Even as I turned to poetry at age 5, even as I started to write, even, you know, the books that I read, you know, having to walk so many kilometers to the library, and you know, we didn't have the internet. So
Yeah.
you know, all of the little pieces. And I think what I can claim for myself is being a good listener. I
Mm.
it's to be open to seeing a vision bigger than myself. And I'll tell you a short story, because I this is my favorite story to tell. It's I think the most joyful moment of my childhood. And believe it or not, it happened at the landfill. So, you know, my brother and I, we would fetch water, and we fetch our daily water, and we were, you
Mhm.
know, drenched in sweat and really tired. For me, I've never been like a very physical person, not only because I'm small, but also, you know, physical labor is not my thing.
Okay.
I'm more
That's
of
not your
a,
jam.
yeah, it's like, oh my goodness, at school, people would make fun of me at sports, but I was the chess champion. So that tells you, you know, the kind of work I like to do. And so we would come back from the La Lisa. That was like a river many kilometers away. And we would, you know, I would have my little can. There's a
Mm-hmm.
rag, there's a can, there's 2 gallons. And we would run and go to the dump, because my brother and I would find like all of these trinkets, all of these artifacts and
Oh,
items. And so we loved other people's trash.
you're hunting for treasure.
Yes, yes. And so one day I find this magazine, and it's soggy and smelly. And of course, you know, the flies are everywhere. And I say to my brother, oh my goodness, look at this. And I
Mm-hmm.
turned to him and I said, because I started to see all these kids with like tennis shoes and pre-washed jeans. That's how old I am. and
Mm-hmm.
basically, you know, toys and books, and their parents are reading them with them. And I said, you know, we need to learn this language. And it was in English. And I knew it was in English because my dad loved English. And
Okay.
yeah, he
Yeah.
used to be, you know, he said many words to us in broken English, and it was beautiful. And, you know, no one knew English in the slum, but my dad knew those words, and I recognized that it was in English, and that it said hello, and, you know, all of these things that were familiar to me. So at 7 years old, when this happened, my brother was 5. I told them we're gonna learn English, because we are
Mm.
gonna get out of this. This is not who we are. We need to be like those kids. That's what we deserve. That was, you know, that wasn't what I articulated, but that's exactly how I felt. Like this was what I needed and what I wanted. So for 4 years, Anne Marie, I was doing odd jobs and odd, you know, hustling, as we would
Mm-hmm.
say in good
Were
English.
you in school? Were you
I
going to
was in
school or no?
school. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
My parents, you know, some days were harder than others, and you know, they prioritized our education. And unfortunately, you know, this makes me sad to say, but because I had, you know, this hair texture and my light skin, we had more opportunities than some of the kids that lived in the slum, because
Yeah.
colorism is so present, you know. And you know, any type of discrimination, racism, colorism is in every society, and it was so present, um that I didn't even know that I was Afro Latina, and owned it until I moved to the United States and realized I'm
That's who
white
you are.
there, I'm not white here.
Yes, that's who
And
you are.
yes, and
Drop a little bit of knowledge for our listeners. What is colorism for anybody who doesn't know?
yeah, so it's like classism for color. So you're
Mm-hmm.
categorized by the color of your skin. And so if, you know, if we look at the television programs that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the people who led the country, and we could see that across all over the world, because I used to watch telenovelas, for example, and that I could see that in Mexican telenovelas, I could see that in Venezuelan telenovelas. What who you saw on the screen were people with lighter skin, with
Right.
lighter color eyes, with you know um, e- facial features that resembled
Mm-hmm.
our white colonizers.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's internalized racism where the opportunities are given to the people who resemble the oppressor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
that was just that's a sad thing to think about, and my privilege allowed me to have an education. And so, for our listeners, I think that knowing our privileges and using them for good, but also recognizing that there's no equity without the recognition of privilege.
Absolutely. No matter whether you're on the oppressor or you're the person,
Yeah,
who's being oppressed. Um,
absolutely.
and that's power.
Absolutely.
You said something that sparked a different question that comes to mind, and that speaks to identity. Because you mentioned you didn't even recognize like your Latina identity until you're in this country. And now you're very proud of who you are when
Yes.
before you didn't know. So speak to that in terms of what that transformation is like. Like what, you take joy in expressing that, you
Yeah.
describe yourself as a Latina 5-time TEDx. So um
Yes.
tell us
Yes.
about
Well,
the joy and even the dances that you mentioned in the poem that I just
oh
read.
my goodness. Yes.
The
Yes. So
culture.
yeah, so I in 4 years I learned English. I enrolled myself in English classes. Then I be I was able to get out of poverty because I knew two languages, and in a culture where there's a touristic economy, then that could happen, and I was able to come to the United States because of my college program. But there are some things that happen in between there. But when I came to the United States, that was the first time I realized, I am at a disadvantage here. When I didn't see my privilege until it was taken away.
Wait.
And
Mm,
so, with that, being discriminated against in this country, being mistreated, being excluded, and just the that experience opened my eyes to what it was like for other people who experienced the same thing in my country. And what happened was is that I started to feel the pain of my ancestors.
mm, mm,
I started to connect with them in that level, and you know to recognize that they were enslaved. My African ancestors came for the sole purpose of being enslaved in the island because my native ancestors were extinguished because of the maltreatment that they received. So here I am in one side, a native. Taino is the tribes in the Dominican Republic. So
mhm,
my Taino native, and then I am also the product of African slaves who came to substitute my Tainos. And then recently I had an experience that was very silly and powerful for me, which
okay,
was I
supernatural.
yes. Oh my gosh. I ordered this. So I love this pattern. I probably have something around here. I love this pattern that's blue and white.
Hmm.
And it's usually a China pattern. And so I'm decorating. I'm not good at that either, but I still do it. Kind of like art. It's like, it just gives me joy.
Hmm.
I just do it
Hmm.
for joy. But I'm decorating and I'm ordering some cushions, right? And they're blue and white, and I'm excited because I love
Uh-huh.
that pattern. I ordered some curtains to go with them, but I got the cushion covers first. And when I opened them, my daughter said to me, Mom, is that a colonizer scene?
Oh my God.
And I look at it, and lo and behold, these are colonizers.
Hmm.
It's a colonial scene. And at that moment, I faced that, I said, I need to return this. I'm gonna cancel my curtains. And I just felt like this sense of I don't know, just justice, but also
Hmm.
disappointment. And then a
Hmm.
wave of love just washed over me.
Uh-huh.
And I felt a voice. Is that a cat?
Yes, it is.
Gosh, she looks like Cielito. She looks like my cat.
Yes, this is Cairo.
Hi,
Period.
Tabby baby. So I felt this wave of love, and I heard this part of me say, Elayna, you have colonized her ancestors too.
Yes. Yes, and that's part of your history.
Yeah. And so I looked around at my living room, and I have these artifacts from my native, that they believed were gods. And even though
Hmm.
I'm Christian, I
Hmm.
still, display it in my home. And
Hmm.
and I looked at my art from, my African ancestry that I display in my home.
Right.
And I said, in order to represent the wholeness of who I am, I'm going to keep my colonizer curtains and
Okay.
cushions.
So, in that story, would you consider yourself to be an empath, a spiritual being? Um,
Absolutely.
because I hear what resonates with me in terms of your language is like you feel the spirit
Yeah.
of ancestors. And I don't know that you can explain it to someone who hasn't been there. When you feel a connection, it's almost, um, one might say it's like the Holy Spirit talking to you. Or
Yeah.
one might say that it's like you know that there are people watching you or protecting you, caring for you,
Yeah.
and keeping you out of harm's way and leading you. So you're very in tune to that. How does somebody get in tune with that part of themselves? I mean, given all, and you just scratched the surface and all that you've gone
Yeah.
through. I mean, how do you get in tune with that spirit, with that inner self?
Yeah, as you know, when I was 19, and this was before I came to the United States, I had an experience that was horrific, in which I was kidnapped by a stranger. And, in the period of time where he held me captive, I experienced a lot of physical violence, sexual violence, and humiliation and everything that you don't want a, a
Your
person to
daughter. Yeah,
experience. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, I have 4 daughters, so I would just
yeah.
I cannot even imagine, and that's my daily prayer. But for I was able to escape that, and in um 6 months after that, then so this happened March 7th.
Hmm.
In October 28th, so that will be very soon, coming up an anniversary of that. I was in a car accident completely unrelated,
Mm.
and when I got to the ER, so my brother and I were catching a ride. I was finally integrating myself in kind of in society after this dark time in my life, in which I was so depressed, and I was definitely thinking about death every single day. I felt so alone, and just dirty and undeserving. And like no matter where I was or who I was with, I couldn't escape violence. And so I when the accident happened, the car flipped and landed on top of me. I was a passenger in this accident. I when I arrived in the scene, I was declared dead instantly.
Mm, mm.
And so after,
Oh,
some reviving techniques, I was able to come back, but I was still in a coma for 8 days. And
mm.
so I, I'm not saying that that's what people have to do. I'm saying that that's how it happened to me. But
Right.
I discovered the formula there because while I was in coma and while I had I call it not near death because it was death, but my afterlife experience, I was able to get many sacred encounters and to also communicate with I would say with God,
Yes. Yes.
to be blunt,
Yes. Yes.
and to angelic light beings. And so I received a lot of messages that were really powerful to me. And when I woke up from that coma, the number one thing that I received is, we cannot even breathe on our own. I was being supported in breathing, and I was kind of looking at myself down, and I was thinking, you know number one, our worth is infinite no matter what we do or don't do.
Mm, mm,
And we are, when we recognize that we are more than our body,
mm,
and that we can even make ourselves breathe, that's something that's happening, that there's a consciousness, there's a power that I call God, that's allowing us to inhale and exhale on a regular basis. And when we cut that flow, then we cannot live. And so number one is just being aware, with every breath,
breath.
that we
Breath
have
is life.
that we have this grace to be supported in this life. Number two is, when I was in the coma, I'm sure, Anne Marie, that you would never say like, girl, don't be lazy, get
Mm-hmm.
out of there, and like you're worthless because you're not achieving and performing
Mm-hmm.
and being productive. So to find the value in just being, as a
Mm.
yeah, I
Say
noticed that
that again for the people in the back. Say
yeah,
that again.
I was, if you think about in those terms, I was actually a burden. I was like making, like I didn't do anything for anyone. I didn't encourage anybody. I didn't do any chores. I wasn't going to school. I was just laying comatose in a bed, in a cot, in a, remote hospital somewhere. And yet I I saw the value of my life by the
Mm.
people surrounding me, and by the just being, just my essence was providing something to this world. And so when we recognize that, like number one, we cannot even breathe on our own. We are just so, operating by grace here. Number two, we are of infinite worth. And number three, we are more than our body. We are an infinite being with immense potential. And I'm
Yes.
not saying potential like being president or royalty or whatever, being on the cover of a magazine, or speaking in many countries. That's not it. It's the potential that you have as an individual to impact another
Impact.
life.
To impact another life and to be a light for somebody else.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like, if she can do this, if he can do this, then I can do it too.
Yeah,
And therein lies the hope. So it's like
absolutely.
being a lamppost on the path
Yeah,
towards healing, and
yeah,
healing from the wounds. Uh,
yes.
that's work to deal with that. And in fact, you spoke World Mental Health Day. You gave a speech. Okay. And I have a quote from you, and I would like to read it.
Yeah.
It says, I believe one of the reasons we struggle is that we often bypass our emotional pain with what I call poisonous positivity. Just like we seek healthcare and attention for our bodies, it's essential we care for our minds and our emotional states. Being positive alone is not going to cure our physical or emotional wounds. You go on and talk about the barriers, but I want to stop there because it's very hard to explain to someone, for example, like the difference between emotional abuse and physical abuse.
Hmm.
Physical abuse, you can see black and blue.
Yeah.
Emotional, there are wounds there that you cannot see. And I think about the people who have grown up hearing things, and society just try to say, well, think positive, you know,
Hmm.
change your mindset. These are the
Yeah.
buzzwords of today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So unpack that for us. Why do we bypass emotional wounds? That's one question.
Yeah.
And why is positivity sometimes called poisonous? So it's a two-part question.
Yeah, I love this question. Well, the reason that we bypass is because we've been conditioned, I call it the 3D, to dismiss, deny, and downplay our pain.
Let's say that
And
again. Dismiss, deny.
downplay.
Okay.
And the biggest culprit in our society is, you know, and well-meaning, of course,
Mm-hmm.
is to want to fix and ease somebody else's pain.
Mm-hmm.
So we see it, just like when we were babies, we effortlessly made an impact. And it doesn't matter whether even if you were wanted or not. Even the nurse that held you, you made her day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
have as a light being here on the planet, you were put here to spread joy and love.
Yes.
Um, and then you're 2 years old and your toy breaks and your mom says don't cry,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then you scrape your knee and you look at her and you're crying, she says you're okay.
You're a big girl or you're a
Yeah.
big boy.
Yeah. And then you grow up and then people start to say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yes. Or suck it up
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you'll get over it.
Oh, no, and yes, absolutely. And then when I was, kidnapped, people would say, "Thank God you survived." And
Mm-hmm.
and that's all great, but the subtext that I read or that I heard was the rest doesn't matter.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and so here's a worse one. At least you didn't die.
At least you didn't die. Which I want to put a subtext in there. That sounds to me a lot like feeling unseen
Yes.
or you feel unheard.
Yes.
Okay, go on, go on.
Yes.
This is
And
good.
then we use this tool called comparative pain.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me something and then I try to one up you and say, well, that's nothing like I went through. Or
Right.
or I try to dismiss and deny and downplay my pain and I say, wow, Anne Marie, like you've been through so much. I've never been through anything like that.
And the
So
the dismissive one is the one that gets me because it's like you're trying to share your pain because you want some sort of relief, but nobody's hearing you.
yeah,
Like nobody's hearing you, nobody's seeing you.
yeah,
Nobody's seeing what you're trying to say, and it's almost like the internal dialogue. It's like I'm screaming. I want somebody to
yes,
understand.
yeah.
Yes, I get it.
Absolutely. And so, there are three types of poisonous positivity that fit all of these categories. Number one, at least that's what I have found. Number one is the invalidating gratitude, like, thank God for this or that. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I was taken to the trauma unit after being kidnapped, and somebody said, I have great news. You are not pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, it might be great news for you. I didn't even consider the fact that I could be
Be
pregnant.
pregnant. Right.
I didn't even think of that, or, that I tested negative for STDs. I
Right.
didn't
Right.
even consider that. And so the invalidating gratitude is bypassing with gratitude. I'm hungry, but I'm grateful that at least I can eat tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but honor that you're hungry right now and feel that pain and honor how painful it is to be hungry. Then there is also the far-fetched silver lining,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we are always hanging on to something, right? And then there's the motivational shame.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like, you got this, girl, because you know what? I don't feel like I got this. And now I feel like there's something wrong with me for feeling like I don't got it when you are so convinced that I got it.
So, Elayna, what do you do then? What because sometimes people are saying this because they're well-meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to empathize in an experience that has not been their own. So how do people offer comfort or reassure? Can you be comforted? Can you be affirmed in these situations?
I love it because you're using all my keywords.
Yeah, because
I
what you're saying resonates with me.
Yes. Well, I always say that, the trouble lies in the three A's. I use alliteration all the time.
I
And
see.
it's
I
and
see.
it's trying to offer assurance, affirmation, or advice. So stay away from that.
Hmm.
And what to do? I call it the ministry of presence. And I'll tell you a story on how I discovered the ministry of presence. And of course, I didn't name it the ministry of presence until later, but that was the first moment in which I experienced it, and I try to model it every day of my life, and especially in motherhood, because we learn this from childhood. And the moment that I experienced this, I was 19 years old. I had just come out, escaped from being kidnapped. I'm walking toward a gas station to ask for help. I see this lady come out of the car. It was a fancy car. I could tell that. I mean, I'm a slum kid and I didn't know much about cars, but I could tell she was someone who would judge me. That's what I thought. I felt enveloped in shame. This lady's gonna come and tell me that I'm bloody and I'm a mess, right? But she comes out, she looks like Audrey Hepburn,
Hmm. Hmm.
and she gets a fancy coat jacket or suit jacket, puts it and covers my nakedness. And then I feel her pearl necklace on my cheek, and she's caressing the parts of my scalp that are missing hair where he had pulled it off.
Right.
And I'm thinking about how my blood is getting on her dress. But she just held me, Anne Marie, and she didn't say a word, and I don't even know her name. But it was the first time I was actually mothered in my life. And
Mm.
and she had nothing to say. She just helped me. So I always say, avoid the assurance and the affirmation and the advice, hold them and hold your tongue.
Mm.
Hold them and hold your tongue. And the three S's of the ministry of presence are silence, just like the woman at the gas station, safety, because I felt safe with her. I could sob and say all of the things that I wanted to say, which weren't many or very articulate in that moment, but she just provided that silence, safety, and space for me. And what happens with this, Anne Marie, is that when we don't jump to fix or ease their pain with
Mm-hmm.
our wisdom,
Yes,
um,
yes,
then what happens is that the amygdala calms down because we're in a fight or flight or freeze moment in those moments of trauma or pain. And that is whether you had just been through something or you're re-experienced it, triggered, suicidal, whatever it is. We are not in our executive functioning. We are in a fight or flight mode. So to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the executive functioning of our brain, our thinking brain, our amygdala has to tone down.
yes,
And what happens with this silence and safety and space is that it calms down the amygdala so that we can access the thinking part of our brain. And guess what happens? We now give advice to ourselves, assure ourselves, and affirm ourselves because I say, Anne Marie didn't motivate me, but she's holding me. So I think I'm gonna be okay.
yes. That is how, Elayna, that you give a master class. You just gave us a master class and working with our people who have wounds, and we all have them.
Yes, we
They
do.
just have a different perspective, a different thing to them, but we all have wounds. You just ran a master class.
Thank you.
You did, you did. So, just in terms of what I would love to talk about before we go, before we leave, is that you serve a lot of people. And I would love for you to talk about, the group that you lead. I want to talk to you about your mission, your purpose, how you're operating there, and how you're helping moms. So,
Thank you. Thank
oh
you for
my
asking
goodness.
that.
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah, so
I'm going to have to replay this because myself because that was just a master class. We need to just sit back and process everything that you just said. Okay.
thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I really um my intention is that people really take it to heart, and I always say, when someone's in pain, don't be positive, be present. And so if we are able to give that presence to others, then that's definitely how we're going to make the world a better place where we're allowed to suffer, but we find love in our suffering. But what I like to do, because I discovered that because I've been using storytelling as a healing tool since I was 5 years old that I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's definitely my calling, and my mission is to not only tell my own stories, which are many, and like you said, we just scratched the surface, which is why I consider myself a student of pain. But I realized that I wanted to also help others, in telling their own stories and facilitate that transformation. So uh, about 2 decades ago, I received this download, and I told you, that's what I can claim. I'm a good listener. So um I I started to use this system of transformational storytelling and share it with people, my coaching clients. And so I created a community called Transformational Storytellers, where I help impact centered leaders to use and craft and tell their story in ways that empower people to do three things. And those are the three things for which I'm alive, is to help them break cycles like abuse, addiction, worthlessness, houselessness, whatever it is. And then break cycles, find peace from
Mm.
their past in their present, just break, I would say, find reconciliation with their ancestral and generational traumas and curses, and then feel whole in who they are. And of course, I'm also on a journey of all those three. That's what life is all about. I don't claim to know all the stories, but I claim to be a student of it. And also, because when you are blessed, you bless others, I'm also a teacher of it. And that's what my community is all about. And I strive to really serve with my whole heart to anyone who wants to make an impact, because really and truly that's what we're here to do. And I know, because I've been there, right? I've been up
Yeah.
there, and I
Yeah.
know that the reason why we're here, and we all experience pain, and I call it, it's the common thread of humanity. We are born through pain, we die because of pain. And so our entire existence is marked by pain. And so pain exists because it demands presence, and in that presence we find love, really. And I call it the alchemy of pain. And actually, I have a whole series of books. You can see them right here, the gifts of
Yes.
pain.
Yes. Tell
The
us
gifts
about the
of
book.
pain, because we can transform that pain into love.
Mm,
Yeah.
we can. I've got a quote for you. And I want to say, us meeting one another is a divine intervention.
Yes.
So think about all that you just said. And here's the quote that I had already typed up. The medicine woman is an alchemist, a weaver of magic, a bridge, channel, and a traveler through time and space. But she does not heal another person. She holds space for healing to happen. It's exactly what you were just describing when you were talking about the woman who came out, because the woman couldn't heal you, but she held the space, the physical
Yes.
space for you.
Yeah. Wow. I have chills, Anne Marie.
I,
Goosebumps and chills.
goosebumps and chills. Absolutely. I think this is serendipitous. I really do.
Yeah.
How do people get in touch with you? How do people sign up? Anne Marie's going to go sign up.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, because
I
I
want
love
to
you.
join this community. I say that not to be facetious, is that the word?
I think
Not to
so.
be not to be flattering. I say it because the confession I have of my own as I'm listening to your story is that I'm a woman who, when I was younger, I was very sensitive.
Mhm.
And people, they either made fun of it or they took advantage of it
Yeah.
because they didn't understand it. And of course, I didn't understand myself,
Yeah.
what I was experiencing. I didn't have any role models to explain it to me. I didn't have the words to articulate it. And I remember I would start crying. I cried easily every time, like my feelings would get hurt.
Yeah.
And I couldn't explain how it is that I would feel other people. I didn't have words. And I'm listening to you run this master class, and I'm saying, I can learn and I can grow so much. But how do people get in touch with you? And also your website, because you
Mm,
help moms as well. So we
yeah.
want to make sure we share that information.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that you just spoke to most of the people who are healers, who are listening to us. If you are sensitive, it's because you are a healer. That is what qualifies you to heal. But unless you own your sensitivity, you will not activate that healing gift. And so thank you for calling that forth. And yeah, I would love for everyone to communicate with me. I love people.
Yes.
I am on social media at the positive mom everywhere, in your favorite social media channel. That's my handle everywhere. The Positive Mom. My website is also The Positive Mom. And if you put /EF, like Elayna Fernandez, then you can see all of the things that you need to see about me. And definitely sign up for the Transformational Storytellers community is transformationalstorytellers.com. And I work with impact centered leaders. So only those who are called to impact others and help others transform, but they in turn want to do it in their own self because you cannot give what you do not
Not have.
cultivate. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And what you don't have. So,
yeah,
Elayna, I just want to thank you very much. One of your books, the book of poetry, is called Dancing with Death. We
yes,
see another book behind you, The Gifts of Pain,
yeah,
and much success to you as you take this message forth and you travel in another week or so. And
yeah,
just blessings, blessings for this conversation. And yes, let it bring healing to
yeah,
everybody who hears it.
yeah.
Amen.
Blessings to you. Amen. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you so much.